Hello and welcome to another edition of the Low Code Campfire. This is the episode 88 for March 10, 2023. This is an event that we do every week. Every week on Fridays this hour to get together and talk about low code in general, Plant and App in specific, and it's a very interactive format where you can share and show and learn and help others. So do be ready to show, bring something to show, come with ideas and suggestions. These are recorded and put out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/plantandapp, and we invite you to subscribe. We'll run an agenda something like this today, where we'll say hello and then go around the campfire and do first call, and then after that get into other things like our campfire website, our feature requests, perhaps other things. But after a while, we'll go into our Afterglow segment. We'll stop the recording, have a virtual iced tea, and just chat with each other, continue the discussion offline. Very good. Do engage with us, jump in, show and tell, use the chat window, however you want to do it. We ask that if you have some noise going on behind you, that you mute yourselves. You can submit questions and topics in advance. That's on those links are on the emails that we send to you, but you can also use that QR code. With that, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And good afternoon to Jim.
Oh.
Now I'm virtually in the morning time. It's getting my second wind for the day.
Well, good deal. First call. Anybody got something that we need to get right into?
I have a question on how to do something, which is, how do you run a total on a grid?
Jim, you're a little bit garbled, but we'll help if we can. What did you say you had a question?
I did. Let me change headsets.
Okay. It would be nice. The boss is here today too. Good morning, Bogdan.
Hello, hello.
While Jim is looking for his other headset, I will just say I often learn things about our product based on the questions that come in. And yesterday I learned something new, and that is that the API endpoint module that we now automatically place on your system used to be DN and Sharp. You could place an API endpoint module. But the one that we place on our, we create a page and put it on page for you. And I learned that deleting the API endpoint and removing it from the recycle bin results in all of your APIs that were associated with that module being deleted. Am I the only one that didn't know that?
Okay, who told Dale that we were going to keep that a secret from you?
Your headset is much better. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, so anyway, there is another procedure that we do sometimes to recreate the pages, and the way it was explained to me, yeah, delete all those pages underneath configuration and empty them out of the recycle bin, and we'll regenerate this stuff for you automatically. And so obviously that instruction sets us up on a collision course with APIs. So we'll not be giving that advice out anymore. But anyway, just throwing that out as a known feature. We'll talk about it in our product team as to whether that's a good feature, but that is the way we're doing it today. So, Jim, are you ready to ask your question?
I am. I was waiting for some background noise to stop now,
Okay.
which is The when you do a subtotal on a grid, I've seen you do it on different things, but where is that configured?
I think it's just a setting in the grid. Let's find our way.
I went looking for a video or something. I couldn't find one. So
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I happen to have a form here that is showing some events, a number of events that are happening. So let's see if we can make that happen. On the N events field, there is a really thought it was down here. Show in footer, a sum.
there it is. Okay. I was looking at the grid level, not at the field level. Okay.
Yep. And let's see if that does that. Well, it does. It's not positioned well here on this one, so we'd have to work with it a little bit. But yep.
Okay. And does that, if you have filters on, does that sum what's displayed or?
Yes.
Okay. That's exactly what I need. Thank you.
Love it when we start with an easy one.
Well, I was just making up for you not knowing about the API endpoints.
Oh. Good. What else is going on?
Hey, did you ever get the API to Zoom example?
No, I didn't, Jen. It's been kind of crazy, so I apologize for that. But
That's okay. I just wanted it like before July. I'm not in a hurry on that one. Just kind of wanted something to look at. I could also go without, you know, an example. Just wondering.
yeah, so in the absence of any other discussion, I can find it and we can just go through it here, even if I don't have it up on Campfire. Put it up on an unpublished page on our community. So let's first verify that it's working. So we had forms register for webinar. View that page. So if you were to go to community.plantanapp.com, forms register for webinar, it asks this information. So we'll do, and it's automatically connected to a particular, you can connect it to any webinar, you'll see that, but register. And in theory, we'll get an email from them. So if we look at Zoom, yeah, that was Zoom. Let's verify that happened. And that was for Low Code Cafe. And actually, I'm not going to show this because we show a bunch of emails other than mine, so I won't do it. But we'll assume that I'm signed up. Let me find the email. anyway, let's look at how that goes together. So I have a topic, first name, last name, email, company, have a static text that shows the result. That's what we did. We had a webinar ID and an occurrence ID. So in the events, I used a workflow get Zoom webinar. And so this is saying I'm going to go get whatever the webinar, for the webinar ID, it's going to output some JSON that I can parse through. So I'm parsing the JSON into tokens so that I can use them, and then and that goes into a token called W. So one of the things that they're returning is the topic, W topic. So that I'm putting that's where I get the name of the webinar that's being done, and then there's a number of occurrences that are part of this particular webinar. So I'm getting an occurrences list so that I can loop through them. And so with that, I'm grabbing the first occurrence. That's the one that I want to register people for. So I set the occurrence ID equal to the occurrence list occurrence ID. And I only do that if it's blank. So this is just an easy way to pull the first one off the list, or one way to pull the first one off the list. I'm sure I could have done it otherwise. So that's getting the webinar ID and the occurrence ID populated. So let's look at that first workflow, execute get Zoom webinar.
And while you're going there, Dale, I just wanted to confirm that I checked and your registration is definitely in place.
Excellent. Thank you for doing that. So we'll go to configuration and look at get Zoom webinar. Workflow get Zoom webinar. Looks like this. It just does a server request. So the input is what webinar ID do we care about? The process is it's doing a server request. Server request going to this URL, API Zoom. I'll pop that on the chat as we go, just so that in case you want to have it for copy and paste purposes. So it's a get that you do, and I'm choosing, I don't want all the previous occurrences, so it's just going to give me the one result. And we have to pass it some stuff. We have to pass it a authorization, which is a bearer code. And I have another workflow that's going to get this bearer code for us. So we'll dig into getting the access token. And we also want it to do content type of application JSON. The output is going to be webinar JSON, and then we're simply on our output side taking that same webinar JSON and outputting it as full JSON. So I am going to come over here to Zoom just to get the webinar ID. So that we can test this thing out and see how it runs. So if we do save and test and pass it a webinar ID, and actually it's defaulting there, so it would always return this one if we didn't do anything, but I'll paste it in there so we can see it work. And now we can see all the lovely stuff that Zoom gives us back about our webinar, so we can take a look at it. So we get the post, the email, the topic, and that's what I wanted, the topic, right? But I get everything else. the time zones, description, so you can get everything you want about it out of that. So that one returns a useful information. Let's dig into the that bearer request thing. So that again, it connects here where we say bearer plus whatever gets returned here. So it's the Zoom access token that we want information about. So get Zoom access token, we edit it, it has a couple of steps, doesn't take any input. Actually, this is a workflow token. So here's the workflow behind it. In a minute, we'll look at the token, but it's just revealed as a token. So the output of this thing is the access. So no input, the output is the access. So to do this, you do a call to Zoom. Here's another one on the clipboard that says that you want to get a grant type of account credentials, and you're passing in your account ID. So this is a token that I've set up in tokens with my Zoom account ID. You'll have to use yours, but that's just a simple token in a namespace I created. And so it's a post method. You have to provide your authorization as well, and that's just a token, a constant token. So those are two things that you're going to need: your account credential authorization and your account ID. And then this workflow will work for you to return. What does it return? An output called credentials, and which I must have parsed. Yep, I parsed credentials into C so that I could use it. And then in the output, I output the C access token. So this gives us an access token we can use. So it doesn't take any input. I'm going to just run it, and we get a nice token that this is what we need to provide as part of the bearer to go and work with Zoom going forward. So the that token, that workflow is revealed as the get Zoom access token. And if we look at that, Zoom access token, edit, it's just a run workflow token that runs that workflow and it gets the output. But one of the fun things you can do with that is I didn't do it here, but you can activate the cache on it. So as it's set up now, every time you execute it, it would go, every time you executed the workflow that needed that bearer token, it's going to go out to Zoom and get one. If we added the cache on here, like for example, I think that token would last for an hour. So we could put a 30 minutes, convert 30 minutes to seconds, for example, and put that in here, and then that same token would get used over and over again for the course of an hour and then automatically regenerated. But it's a neat technique to not have to get one token and use it for as long as it lasts, and then automatically get another one. So that has gotten us the information out of Zoom. Our Zoom webinar that's given us our information to put on the page that we're going to need in registration, and then the registration part happens in the button. And so this is where this workflow is going to do the registration, and then we parse it back and give a success or failure message. But all the magic happens here at registration to Zoom webinar. So that needed a webinar ID, the occurrence that you want to connect to, plus this first name, last name, email, and an organization if they provide one. So Let's dig into ad registration. Look at workflows here. Registration to Zoom webinar. It takes all those things that we were just looking at as input, the webinar ID, occurrences, first name, last name, whatever. And it does these, all it does is a server request. So this is the server request for that. It does, it's a post, and there's a structure that you can pass. There's lots and lots that you can pass in through the structure. You can look at their documentation and pass in more, but this seemed to be the minimum, and this is really all that I wanted to do to register somebody. You have to have that same bearer token, so that's a reused copy and paste thing, and content type, and it gives us back webinar JSON, which I am outputting back as full JSON, so you can do whatever it returns, you can extract out of it and process it. So that's the meat of it. Does that make any sense at all? Did I skip anything that was go too fast on anything?
Yeah, all of it a little too fast. I'm just kidding. Some of the details about which parts of their API documentation to use, I think that's actually going to clear it up for me a little bit, just because they have a lot on their website. It's hard to dig through that and see what I actually need.
Yep. So certainly those endpoint, the URLs that I passed to you there, those endpoints, focusing on just those few will limit the problem. And I'll still, it's just a copy and paste and put some credentials in there. So I'll still do that, but I didn't want you to hold up until it surfaced for me to do that.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure. And of course it'll be on the recording. Yep.
Dale, I like how you used the workflow as a token to pass in the bearer token, because that's so handy, because in the past what I've done is run a workflow within the workflow to get the bearer token and then tokenize it and pass it in. But you just pass in the token, it runs the workflow, and you have your bearer token. So I like that method.
Yep. And so it simplifies the workflow.
Right.
This one where it's doing this call, instead of having to have another call first, which we could have done. We could have called that same workflow that would have gotten the result and then pass it in here on this bearer token. But the other thing it does is, of course, activate cache. And,
Yeah.
Which you couldn't have done easily with if you did it directly. So, and then in this case, because we cached that token globally, then every user of the site would use the same bearer token for the duration. So we would minimize our calls to Zoom. Not that Zoom cares, I guess, but if you had a lot of people, a lot of activity going on, and it's okay to share the same token across the site, it's a neat way to do it. Good. What else?
Since we have such a quiet group today,
Please.
Several months ago, I asked about a problem I was having with the Excel CSV import. I get an error that talks about bad data and says enable the bad data on the bad data filter on the import. And your response on the community forum was that it was part of the DLL or that is embedded for the CSV import. And I just didn't know what DLL that was, that I might be able to go find it and find how to activate the feature that it's giving me an error message on.
Do you happen to have the community
I can go pull it up. I didn't think we would have this much time that I would be able to bring it up. It's actually going to be under CSV, I think.
And
Right there on that first one.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it is something that. Yeah, what I was implying here is that our code calls the DLL and does the thing. I don't know that you'll be able to call the DLL and impact it. There wasn't a way to impact it.
So my manual fix on this is I open that file in Excel and resave it as a text file, and Excel will wrap the fields. So the problem is an embedded quote and embedded double quotes, actually, I guess. And Excel will wrap the fields with double quotes. You got an idea on a different way to accomplish that? So I don't have to have manual interaction.
Yeah, so the file is you're using a single file upload, and I assume. Right,
Yeah, if you scroll up a little bit where you can see my message, you'll see there's an example line of the data. And so it's sending in dimensions on stuff with that 48 by 96 inches. And and that's blowing up the CSV import.
Are the text fields already delimited, or is it just comma delimited?
Delimited, it's tab delimited file.
Okay.
I
wonder
because they also have embedded commas in their source files. So.
Yeah. So I wonder if you could bring in the file and treat it as text to begin with, and run some replace on it. So you could replace all of your double quotes. So you bring it in, first of all, you replace all your double quotes with an escaped double quote, and then you replace all your tabs with double quotes.
Bring it into
you could have a workflow, and then either a Razor action or a JavaScript action to do the replace, to do that text replace.
So what method would you use to when you say bring it in, though, what method would you use to import it? Just bring it in as like one giant field?
You're still probably using a single file upload.
Yeah.
And single file upload, I assume what's happening now is you're using a single file upload, and then you're taking the output of that and passing it to into a CSV type thing.
Right. I'm loading using the CSV import.
Yeah. So so you've got a token that represents the CSV file. After the single file upload, you've got a token which represents the CSV file. Before you do that, you could manipulate the CSV, because I think you can change the CSV source to other options.
Yeah, CSV file, CSV text.
Yeah, but you could, just the CSV text would be the token that you get after you've manipulated the string.
Right. So in your single file upload, you have a file. It's going to return a file, and it probably has, what does it have?
Is it the file stream?
Oh.
I think it's the files.
Maybe the stream, or just the fact that you have the file, which you could then
yeah, you
read and
need
process.
something that represents the text.
Right. We have a request in for something to actually read a file, but you could use a server request to get the contents of the file into a token, which you could then manipulate. You could probably,
Yeah, that's probably
Razor would
Okay.
pass it to Razor and let it do some work.
yeah.
So bring the file in and then call a Razor script to manipulate the file.
Yeah, and do your text, do your string replace.
Okay.
I think that, because essentially that's what you're doing. You're doing by opening it in Excel and saving it. You're automating those
Right.
steps. So it would just be replicating that. I suppose because once you've done the single file upload, the file does exist on the file system. You should be able to read in. You could specify the file. But
Okay.
yeah, it's something to experiment with a little bit. I might be able to have a look at it, and if I get anything, I'll respond on that onto that query. Because the other way of doing it, because the file is already on the file system, you could kick off a workflow that uses the file from the file system.
But in the same way, that workflow is still going to have to read the file.
Yeah, you've got to do you have to, if you have to get the Razor to either take the string that is the contents of the file, or you give it the address of the file, and the Razor will open it and process it. I'm sure I've got some examples doing that knocking around.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. In a past life, I've done something like that where, and I hadn't thought of doing it in Razor, but that makes sense to me, because that way I can clean up the file and let it load through the normal process then. Yeah.
Yeah, your Razor could either save back a cleaned up version of the CSV file if you will want to, if you need to use it again, or it could just return a token, which is the contents, the cleaned up contents, in which case you would paste that that token would go into the field as the CSV text.
Would the size of the file, some of these files get very large. Would large files point to one direction or the other of saving it back to as a file system file versus trying to load it all into memory and do it?
Yeah. When you say large, how
20, 30 megabytes.
Yeah. I think I would be tempted to work with a file.
Okay.
I think a string can be that big, but it would probably be handy to have the cleaned up. Well, do you discard the files once you've processed them?
Not for we hold on to them for 30 days.
Yeah.
But then they're gone. We
Yeah.
don't, unless something blows up, we don't have to go back to them.
Yeah. So it might be handy to have the cleaned up as you're, because I assume you hang on to them in case there are queries and you need to do some investigation. So it probably would be good to keep the manipulated file.
Okay.
So if the razor were to do its work and return as a token the output file, so that you would know what it's called.
The address of the new file that's been created.
Yes.
Right.
And then this would be. You could use CSV file to retrieve it back and process it, and then the rest of your script would not have to be touched. So you
right.
One more piece.
Yep. I noticed you got field separator. The field separator drop down that has got the tab, so you maybe don't have to replace the tab character with a comma. You could just
and that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah. You just need to escape your double quotes, don't you?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that should be. I think that's probably the best way is to get some C# going and read it and replace it and write it.
Is there? So I actually probably have a C# program that does virtually that, because I know I've had to do this in a previous life on other files. Are there limitations to Razor that I should be looking for that wouldn't allow you to implement something that was written in a C#? Okay.
No, the syntax is slightly different. Your using statements have, you have an @ sign before them, so there's some slight differences, but pretty much if it's a single file type of program that you've got, then you should be able to just change some of the minor changes to the syntax, and I think you'll find it will do what you need.
Okay, I will go look at that. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to see if I have any Razor examples.
I might have something knocking it. If it's useful, I might be able to find something.
Yeah, I got one here.
Yeah. So it's just slightly different. You've got your @ signs for your using statements, and the code block is within the curly brackets. Pretty much the same.
Trying to recall this. This is outputting FN, right?
Yeah, that writes FN.
So this is the way you'd get a return.
Yeah, you just want one variable.
Right. So I was doing a test to see if something was, and let's see, I have some test code here. It's pretty faint, but yeah, so it's it pulled out first name. So this thing was pulling out first name, and this is outputting it, and then whether or not it contains a 99.
Yeah, you can use return as well if you don't want to have them. The Razor is similar to the old-fashioned PHP, where you're mixing code in with HTML, but you can also do a return from that main code block, if I remember right.
Something like that.
I think so.
Lost my JSON here.
Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. I thought there was a way of doing it, but clearly not. Yeah.
Okay. there anything here that you want to see? I can put it on the clipboard if you want it.
No, I'm good there. I mean, you're dealing with a JSON string, so I'm the function, but I've used the parse command before, so and a replace
Yeah.
command in C#. So
So that's of course one of the things you want to. I designed it to bring in a token. So
right.
all with a token. So that's the structure for.
And I think what I'll probably do, I think my code, once I go find it, opened a file and read through it line by line and parsed it and wrote it back to a new file.
Which probably happens very, very quickly. Save you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So quickly, I forgot all about it.
What else can we take on?
So Patrick, are the training things that you demonstrated on Wednesday, are you still really happy with those? Those look pretty cool.
Yeah, and we're making more improvements since Wednesday too. And just so you know, that issue I was having during the call, I figured it out afterwards, and and then it started working. Well, it started working before I figured it out. And when I thought, why didn't it work on the call? So anyway, but we've fixed that since then.
So I was unclear in your demo. You were hooking into the Plantain app screen, but could you build like a menu somewhere of functions? You know, oh, this is how you check in an order. This is how you receive an invoice from a menu, and then let it guide you through and show you the steps? Or did you have to be in the right place to begin with?
Nope, absolutely, you could do that. Yeah. So I was, demoing it on our configuration screens just because that's something that we're working on right now. But yeah, you can use it on any page of your site.
And there's a couple of ways to do that, Jim. One, if we look at Campfire, I have a guide activated here. And so this is, we'll look at how it's implemented, but you can have a what would you like to do kind of thing pop up and give a list of different things to learn about. So for example, I have intro to Campfire, and in theory, if I clicked it, it would give me the introduction to Campfire. And of course, it tried to show off and it's not working. But if we look, let me get logged in. I might have done something that required it to be logged in. But one of the things that can trigger a guide is, nope, still doesn't work. One of the things that can trigger a guide is like a query string. So you could have your normal page that would never come up with, you'd have your order entry system and would never come up with the guide. But if from your learn section, learn how to enter an order, you would navigate to the page with a particular query string, and that would activate the guide. Right. So let's see. Let's look at those options. Point is, it could be there passively, and then.
So you could have a guide button on every page that re-triggers that guide for that function that you're trying to get them to do properly.
So when you have a guide and it has triggers, and so it has a description to account and what are the conditions that trigger this. And so you can make it be token based. And so something off the command line, that something like that would make it be true, and then the guide would activate.
So you could have a button that just rewrites your URL out there and
Mhm.
cool. Okay.
So the new features that Patrick was got to some, I think, and trying to get to others, all that is in 125, but guides will still work in earlier versions. I suspect the attention they got in 125 are probably, they'd probably be better, right? But
Yeah, we had started to look at them under Bootstrap 3, and then when Bootstrap 5 came along, there were some issues, and your suggestion was to wait a little while. So I'm hoping 125 is the little while for using them.
you had this position of this guy.
What are you looking for?
Oh, I'm the DOM element.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That whole hover click to pick excitement. So it's Jim, your comments to us were well taken. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not super easy to create a guide, but it is a neat functionality. So if you learn how to do it, and you mentioned maybe we should call it page element instead of DOM element, but at the end of the day, it really is, you gotta, especially if you get into editing it, you've got to understand the
Well, and I made that comment before we got in and saw how much more complex it really is.
Yep.
Because I was thinking of end users being able to help modify their help text to what comes from, what makes sense to them. Are these guides, is the text stored in tables someplace, or is it in what kind of storage, do you know? And the only reason I ask, could I build a form that lets somebody go edit their text without destroying, the functionality of a guide?
Good idea. Probably could.
Yeah, I would guess they're in
Yeah.
Maybe Patrick can confirm.
Yeah, and we have an expert on the call also.
Yeah, because that's where I was trying to type in my cryptic note the other day of separating that out, so that I could go build the flow for them and link from place to place, but let an actual user put it in the non-technical terms that they like, the descriptions and things.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, because as soon as I saw you drop down a screen that had an action stack on it, I was like, uh-oh, not letting a user go there.
And the newer features that we have are not, Dale's not seeing those right now because he's not upgraded to the version that has those, but that it is really cool that you can tell somebody to click on an element and that will advance that'll automatically advance the guide. So it has a lot of interactivity in that way.
And without actually, if you click on that, you're advancing the guide, but not actually performing the function.
No, you're performing it, yeah.
So I mean, like if you have a new button and you say click on that, it's going to advance it, but it's actually going to create or save a new record someplace.
So no, I mean, you mean on the page? So you can put buttons into your guide popovers, tooltips, and they won't do anything but what you have on, what your actions for the button are. But if you if your tooltip is pointing at an element on the page and you tell the person to click it, it will do both what that button is supposed to do, and it will advance your guide to the next step as well.
Okay,
Did I word that well?
I think so.
Okay. So yes, I mean, if you are saying, so in the example I was showing on Wednesday, if you're saying to click, like, I think I did was doing the roles, and if you're saying to click new to create a new role, when you click new, it'll open up you notice that it opened up the role dialog, and going all the way through there, you would actually have created a role, and that's where the tokenization of the title and help text comes in. So you can tokenize that. So if you're doing something like telling somebody to create a role and you want them to create a role that has the exact text that you're telling them, you can give them unique text based on, a contextual value for them.
That was a very complex statement you just made there. I'm thinking through. So
like, for roles, obviously, and you can't create two roles with the same name. So if you want multiple people to be able to follow the guide, the logic is that since you can tokenize the text that you're telling them to enter, and the text that you're telling them to enter is what advances the guide, so they have to enter that exact text, you can tokenize it so that it's unique for each person that's following the guide.
okay,
So that each person that follows the guide can actually create a unique role.
okay.
And you
Yeah,
could
and
even at the end of a guide that does that, you could say to clean up, click the button below to delete the role you just created. So because it's it's not going to be a role that's actually used. So you can and then that on that button could have an action that deletes the role that was just created, and that could all be tokenized. So it's
Patrick?
Yeah.
Perhaps you can help me debug this.
No. No,
Yes.
no, I'm just kidding. What?
So I'm trying to activate a guide here.
Mhm.
Of course, now it works. Why? Who knows? It wasn't coming up.
Okay.
I didn't know why, but now it is. So it's set up to activate. It is set up. Well, you can help me with the other stuff. So I set it up. The trigger for the guide is when they go to the home page.
Mhm.
And so I did that, and I went to the home page, and we got that, and now I have a button that goes on and looks at downloads, and then I should have had a finish button, so that wasn't very good. So that was based on that they visited the home page. So first I'm going to disable this and see if I can get the guide to go away now. Not really, it's okay. All right, so it's turned off. So now let's see if we can make it activate based on a query string like I bragged that we could do. So token based. Believe that might be a good expression.
Sure.
So we go home here. I've got it stuck from before, so that's
You can put a finish on it but then that will record that your user has finished it, but we can also just clear it out.
Yep. So the button is going to be done. This action is going to be finish guide. And that'll be it. So done.
The catch now is I think that, so it has now recorded that you have completed this guide. So
right, but the trigger is how many times the trigger will activate. So
oh, okay, yep.
we can make it be 99 and conditions token based. So we need go equals yes to make this go. So let's see if it runs. So we do this.
Oh, yeah, we need to troubleshoot that a little bit, but seems like that what the steps you put in should be working. I agree.
Okay. Well, so they are a little cantankerous or not obvious, and so it takes a little bit of playing, but it's a neat capability.
The condition that I've used that's worked well is the I put a has role token in so that it only activates if you have the correct role on the home page.
Yep. And so, for example, registered users would be a good one for potentially for me, but you know, it's like everything else, it kind of becomes a little bit of a quest. I don't know if I can make it go though. I should make it go. I don't know. All right, we have 3 minutes left. Anybody have something that they've just been hesitating to bring forward? I'll use this then as an opportunity to talk about one that Patrick found yesterday and that we're going to fix, but our functionality to install all hotfixes, we would have expected a button to appear up here to say install all, and what is the bug that you found if you've used?
Well, it was a joint effort, and the other person's on the call. Jen and I found it together. If the button has the requires data setting enabled, it's the button's not showing even if there is data in the grid. So we've got that in the pipeline to fix it.
Yep. So that's a little bit of a known limitation. For hotfixes, you can just install them individually, but for you know, this example of we're using our product to build our product, and when we have a product limitation, then it starts to impact even our screens. So anyway, we'll clean that one up. Good. We've made it to the top of the hour. This is, you never quite know where these are going to go, but hopefully you got something good out of it. We look forward to seeing you again next week. We will I will be broadcasting from an undisclosed location, my parents' house, so I guess it is disclosed, but I'll be here, and we will see you then. Hang around if you've got a minute. We'll do our unrecorded section. Have a great week, everyone.